Okay, this is information that I acquired on the 28th of June of 2020. It was actually first presented on December 10th of 2013. It was part of a public comment to the Federal Reserve regarding R-1462. It had to do with, it was by a group called New Yorkers for Responsible Lending. Now, I understand what the implications are of invoking New Yorkers in a situation like this. However, and actually because of that, what was actually in this specific public comment was absolutely important at the time and seems to be completely relevant, like literally right now. The public comments had to do with elements connected to the floodplain insurance program, and they were responding very specifically and succinctly to things that they had been involved with at the time. Um, I'm going to review some of the things that they said because it is important to understand that the way I understand it, these people were involved in tracking over a long time how certain changes impacted their community and the situation that they were experiencing at the time. Reading it in the summer of 2020 was very harrowing, especially because many of the things they said specifically in their public comment were directly connected to what I had observed in both Chicago and Houston, connected to the changes to the floodplain program. This current public comment discusses how these communities have been deemed to have their insurance suspended because they did not demonstrate that they had met certain requirements concerning adherence to floodplain management standards that had changed. Unfortunately, I was witness to significant fraud involving misrepresentation of what it means to change or to adhere to certain requirements around the floodplain management program and the elements of it connected to the federal flood insurance program. As a matter of fact, there was a significant situation that happened in 2018 where elements of the flood insurance program were rendered insolvent enough to be engaged in a project of being bonded out or made available for obligation through a foreign bank. It was a foreign country that then ended up getting access to the default on the insolvency that had been declared for the federal flood insurance program. Now, on one level, one could say what they want, but the point of the matter is to allow the government, especially something that has the kind of implications this has, to be subordinated to any foreign government, especially without a formal compact or an announcement to the people, and in a manner such as this, does qualify for significant consideration. Even if that nation is considered to be, on one level, an ally, the fact that we have refused to address allegations of fraud, significant and serious fraud within our own country, leading up to an arbitrary, an imposed insolvency that then allowed for it to be ceded to another country's banking system or central banking system is unacceptable. And we should already have taken action to stop it before it got to a level where what is basically happening is certain communities are being subjected to a collective punishment around debt or allegations of not meeting certain standards in a manner that only makes sense from a particular kind of operationalization standpoint. And this is not the time to be messing around with things of that matter. So I am going to acknowledge that New Yorkers for Responsible Lending had posted this public comment. One of the things they said, the first thing they said about this had to do with force placed flood insurance. And they talked about something called the Bigger Waters Flood Insurance Reform and Modernization Act. When they talked about various elements that were necessary for consideration. The first one, the first recommendation they made was ban kickbacks and non-monetary compensation for force-placed flood insurance. Banning mortgage lenders or services from doing business with affiliated insurance companies, banning from entering into reinsurance deals, banning from receiving any sort of commissions or free or reduced cost service from insurers or affiliates. This is a direct quote. These types of kickbacks have substantially inflated the cost of force-placed flood insurance and create a strong incentive for lenders and servicers to impose force-placed flood insurance on homeowners at the expense of renewing homeowners' existing flood insurance policy. That was on page 2 of their public comment. Another quote. Affiliates of mortgage servicers often unnecessarily reinsure force-placed insurance policies to share in potential underwriting profits. No mortgage lenders, servicers, or affiliated entities should be permitted to receive any fee, commission, kickback, reinsurance contract, service such as insurance tracking or administration, or other of value in exchange for purchasing force-placed insurance. That was the recommendation in 2013. I think it holds up over time that absolutely should have been taken seriously and implemented at that time. It is actually of absolute relevance right now. As a matter of fact, what I understand is happening is that this suspension of floodplain insurance is basically using the communities of concern either directly or derivatives or proxies for whatever the calibration around those sites is as some sort of collateral for financing. And that goes to what they were talking about in here, where they say that what had happened is they had explained how there were certain flood insurance companies that were cutting people off and then taking a while to let them know. And then in the meantime, they were setting up these fees and these fines. And while they're, even if you got to a point where at some point they would agree to waive the fee or they would agree to discount it, the whole process to begin with was illegal and illegitimate. But they banked on and leveraged being able to strong arm people into not wanting to get into the hassle of taking it all the way so that they would agree to pay part of the fee, even though the entire fee was illegal, right? Or they would agree to pay the premium on what was happening and get the extra fees waived. So it was one of these situations where they do something illegal. And because they've done something illegal, it makes it seem like you have a bunch of debt or you have an obligation, especially if they switch it. And then all of a sudden you got a new policy. You have a policy that's been switched because you missed a payment or you didn't get to make that payment at the time. And so they switch it. And when they switch it, it ends up costing you more. There's fees, there's penalties. And it was illegal for them to do it to begin with. But they set it up and then they try to pressure you into agreeing to accept a reduced payment. Well, you owe $2,000, but we'll only make you pay $500 and we'll take care of it. And the understanding being, especially if you engage in manipulation, if we're talking about something like floodplain insurance, especially now that it's directly connected to the Department of Homeland Security under FEMA, then what's to say that they're not going to put a lien on your house in the form of messing with your broadband access? Or manipulating the radio frequency in your area in order to exacerbate your stress or your tension in order to compel you to agree to and accede to cooperation with the lien, with the payment. That's what I understand is being done. I have no idea who in government thought they were authorized to do that. They're not authorized to do that. It's treason and it's high crime, and it needs to be addressed as such. And the thing is, what these guys were talking about at the time and bringing up was an understanding that what is going on right now, if it's not dealt with appropriately, has the potential to accrue and has the potential to be exacerbated or manipulated in manners that can constitute serious and high crimes. That's exactly why this letter that they wrote, this public comment they made, is so important. Not only does it give a lot of practical information about policy implementation that could protect us, but it's also a sort of warning and a validation to other people that are having comparable observations that it is actually that significant, and it does have the capacity to be prevented or forestalled if appropriate action was taken at the time. Unfortunately, it hasn't been, right? Another quote that they had was the agencies should also develop a protocol for supervision that includes regular data collection and reporting to ensure that mortgage lenders and servicers are complying with these standards. They're correct, they should have. But part of what has happened is that there has been something during this time frame in which COVID-19 has been active, and not just COVID-19, it's been happening for a few years, where data is changed illegally and arbitrarily. Data, including and up to executive orders, is being edited. Pieces of legislation are being hacked and edited. And this isn't just about Russian hacking or Chinese hacking. These things have been going on for a very long time. There's been an absolute refusal to respond to very real information about this happening. This is an inside threat, and it needs to be addressed as such. If you're not co-conspiring, whoever you are, if you're not co-conspiring, then it's just that you need to let it be known that this is not going to be accepted. It's not going to be acceptable. Even if you tell me that where I am might be able to escape the pressures that need to be applied to certain areas of the country in order for us to be able to have some sort of currency in the face of a default, I say to you that's not even accurate. Because who actually defaulted and who's actually bankrupt are not the people that are trying to pull these things off as policy that we should be beholden to, that compromises our health and safety and security and tries to completely dismantle whatever constitutional protections we have. They're the ones that are bankrupt. They're the ones that didn't deliver on making sure that they did what they needed to do to make sure that this country was secure and prosperous. And it's evidenced by the fact that they keep continuing to break the law in the most egregious ways and trying to compel us or extort us into agreeing to cooperate in what everybody knows is illegal. It's that illegal. It's illegal to target communities within your own country for completely unacceptable liens in order to leverage that as a form of currency for any reason, especially whatever it would be that they would be alleging that that's been used for. And let me tell you, in the last couple of years, the only thing I've been seeing this be used for is for opportunists that are involved in very high levels of finance to try to depreciate and downgrade certain assets so that they can pick them up for cheap after they get their executive compensation packages and dump all of the toxic stuff that they've intentionally allowed to become unmanageable and toxic and defaulted onto the public through contrivances like what we're hearing about, these bankruptcies that require intervention of the Treasury, and that require some sort of response from Congress while they're refusing to address these important national security matters. So I want to thank the New Yorkers for responsible lending. What you said was absolutely accurate, and if you have any information going on right now, especially if you're able to take any of the things that you presented at that time or any of the other work connected specifically to the flood insurance program and how these changes or these things that have been happening with COVID-19 might be impacted or are impacting the work you were doing then or are doing now, please make that public as much as possible, and please let people know. Thanks.